Welcome back to the 1% Show. If you're new here, tune in to hear me spin the yarns with authors, savants, and eccentric humans every week. I'm your Aussie host, Brandon Nankivell, and it's time to kick back and enjoy the show. Let's go. Do you find it difficult to find time to read? Well, I put together an online course that will teach you how to get twice as much value out of books by reading half as much. It will show you how to strategically select valuable books before you even invest time into reading them. This is something that speed reading courses don't teach you. It will show you whether you should be reading books, ebooks, or audiobooks. It will show you how to conquer your wandering mind, how to apply what you read so you can actually create real results, which is what reading is all about at the end of the day, and how to avoid wasting countless hours due to poor reading habits. It's a lifetime investment that will help you to extract more value from every single book you read from now on. To get started, head to EliteReaderAcademy.com. Again, that's EliteReaderAcademy.com. I'll see you there. To the listeners listening in, today we've got Antonio Centeno. Now, he's a men's stylist. There's probably a ton of other labels we could give you, Antonio. Entrepreneur and YouTuber. Over 1 million subscribers. You've clearly achieved some great success, Antonio. So that's partly why I reached out to you, and it also coincides with my current interest in men's fashion and the importance of dressing well. So, Antonio, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brandon. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and I appreciate your time today too. Very valuable and very good of you to do that. So, yeah, just to kick it off with some casual conversation, Antonio, what are your ties with Aaron Marino? We did just have him on the podcast too.
Oh, I hate that guy. In fact, I've been putting out bounty, trying to get him kind of knocked off because he's my biggest competition. But no, that's not. He's a good friend, and it's funny because our relationship started off with us not really, I think, liking each other. He viewed me as a threat. I viewed him as a guy that didn't know what he was talking about and had this audience, and I wanted it. But I have to admit that he inspired me to start my channel because I was writing articles at a website called The Art of Manliness. I was also writing some articles on my own website. I just started Real Men, Real Style, which was the marketing arm of my custom clothier, which is now a defunct company called Tailored Suit. But I looked at what Aaron was doing, and the interesting thing about YouTube is it shows your cumulative views. And I remember seeing him when he first hit his first 1 million views. And then very quickly, he hit like 3 to 4 million. I was like, wow, this is growing fast. And he's not that good. The guy doesn't know style very well. Like he's more fashion forward. This isn't like I should do something like this. And my wife, I told her this a couple times, and finally she's like, why don't you stop talking about this and just go do it? So I started creating some videos. And me and Aaron, we started talking. He says that apparently he asked me to borrow some content. I said, no, I don't remember this, but it was something that we met up. I said, hey, why don't we just meet up? Let's meet up at VidCon together. And we did that. And we realized that we had a lot more in common than we could ever, it was just someone I could commiserate with, someone that worked as hard as me, if not actually he works harder than me. And you realize that they deserve all their success. And that this is the kind of guy that I actually want to be around because I can talk shop with him all day. It's fun. It's engaging. And now he's one of my best friends. And we've got 2 businesses together. We've got a conference called Menfluential Conference. And then we've got a media company called Menfluential. But it sounds confusing, but Menfluential, initially the conference was called StyleCon. But yeah, those 2 companies enable us to I think just spend we have a lot of fun with them, but they also make a good amount of money. And I just, have enjoyed that relationship.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. So before we move on to the next set of questions, perhaps we'll just turn off our video, Antonio. That will just give us a boost in audio quality.
Sounds good.
Perfect. So just a quick test again. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Brilliant, Antonio. So Now, my next question, just to give a bit more of an overview of who you are, Antonio, I'd love for you to just explain who you are and what it is that you do in your own words.
Sure. So most men don't know how to dress very well. I mean, a lot of guys will agree with that. They don't control their image. And my goal is simply to arm men with the tools to be able to build a wardrobe that complements their individual style. I just see so many guys that have spent a lot of money on their education, they have big aspirations, big dreams. And I want them to be able to send that image, send that message so that they're able to get what they want out of life. And it's not about suits. I mean, if I say Bob Marley, what comes to your mind when you think of Bob Marley?
I personally think of dreadlocks for one thing, and happy vibes the next.
Yeah, and I mean, Light My Fire. I think that's what the book was. I remember reading that book years ago. I had a girl that I liked, and she liked Bob Marley. I figured, hey, I'll learn more. It's a funny story, but I read this book for a girl so that I could talk to her about Bob Marley. And I realized I loved everything that Bob Marley was about. It was about soccer. It was about, getting high. I don't really get into that too much, but it is something that I'm like, this guy is just so laid back. It's about music. It's about peace. I get that. And it's funny, I bought a tie-dye shirt because I just loved Bob Marley. And every time I put on that tie-dye shirt, I felt connected. I never met Bob. I mean, he died years before, I could ever get a chance to meet him. But I don't know. It was just something when I wore that shirt, I felt connected. I felt that relationship with someone I admired. And that's what I think is the power of clothing, the power of fragrance, the power of certain pieces of clothing that we can wear. It's almost like a suit of armor. So if you're going to go into a sales meeting and you're pitching for your nonprofit to be able to, to get funding or something, when you wear the right clothing, it's something that enables you to be able to go in there and put your best foot forward for them not to make a judgment. Because if you're going into a conservative field and, you don't want to wear a tie-dye shirt, not that isn't, who you are, but simply these suits are not going to take you seriously and are going to cut you off before you have the chance to show how your nonprofit is changing the world.
Yeah, wow. Thanks for that, Antonio. So when it comes to the benefits of dressing well, I'm actually a personal customer avatar. I'm like your typical example. I'm 22 years old. I'm on this success journey. I want more out of life. And I've just stumbled across you and Aaron's channel, and I'm looking at it, the videos, the incredible content. I'm thinking, wow, what have I been doing all my life? I'm your perfect example of just dressing atrociously, like the baggy jeans, the clothes all over the floor with no place to store them, and wearing 6-year-old shoes that are battered, and just the whole works, Antonio. So when it comes to dressing well, there's probably a lot of men listening in right now. Women, I'm not so sure. They seem to be a bit more up with the dressing well game than us men do. But for anyone listening that's never really considered dressing well, would you say the bigger benefits come from the psychological benefit and self-image? Or do you think perhaps there's more benefits in the way you are perceived by others and the opportunities that can lead to?
Well, there's not a straight up answer to that. The two things you're talking about, though, they are different phenomena. One is, the power of enclothed cognition, and that's the science of it, is how the clothing we wear affects us. And there is a lot of research. Classic study is they had two groups of people, one of them wearing doctor jackets, the other one wearing painter smocks. Same jacket. It was just a white jacket. But the people that thought they were wearing a doctor's jacket, when they took an exam, they performed statistically a lot higher. The guys that wore the painter's smock, they didn't perform, like there was no bump there. But when someone was wearing a doctor's jacket, they did have a noticeable pickup in terms of the way they performed. We see this in students when they actually dress well and they come in they get that good night's sleep, all factors being the same. And I'm not saying that you can't get away without studying and just dress well. That's not going to work. But the idea is that, yeah, you can put on certain bits of clothing and it's going to have that effect on you. The other thing you talked about is something that we see, how others make a judgment call on you based on how you look. Now, one of the great studies there is, who was it? Thorndike in the 1920s. He called this the halo defect. It now is called the halo effect, but he saw this in the military. So whenever you were making judgments on who was going to get an advancement with military officers, they would often get their file. And with the file was a picture. And if the person looked like the ideal soldier, they were oftentimes promoted more likely than people that didn't look like the ideal soldier, despite the performance or what everything was said about him. They looked the part of an ideal soldier but it all makes sense when you start to think about it. When you think about what a knight of medieval ages, how would a knight in medieval times, what do we know about him or her? It's like something that, what did they wear? Like we expect a knight to wear from the 14th, 15th, 16th, 15th century.
Is that for me, Aaron?
No, yeah, what do you think would be like, if you imagine a knight, what would they wear?
A suit of armor, right?
Yeah, a suit of armor. And that's, a suit of armor. And we have this vision. So when you think of a successful person, now that changes from industry to industry and culture to culture. But if I'm in India, if I'm in China, or if I'm in Australia, and I think of the prime minister, or I think of the top business mogul in your country, like there's certain images that come to mind. Oftentimes that person controls their image and they're well dressed. So I hate to say that one is more important than the other because they play in tandem. It's kind of like a chair that has 3 legs. Well, you cut off any of those, the chair is going to fall over. I like to think that it's important that you pay attention to them together and let them work with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. And excuse me, I think I got your name mixed up with Antonio. Aaron, I'm keep chopping in between the two. Yeah, thanks for that. Not a
problem. I'll make sure to point out Aaron. And Aaron told me about the video that you created. We actually just talked on the phone like an hour before.
Oh, so. No. That's what did he say? I'm curious.
No, he said it was really nice. He really appreciated it.
Ah, fantastic. Okay. All right. So my next question, Antonio, is I've got it here. My apologies. I'm still I'm waking up. It's 7:30 a.m. here. I'm just getting my mind into gear. So my next question for you, Antonio, is what are the most common mistakes newbies make when trying to dress well?
When newbies try to dress well, they're wearing a costume and they're not actually wearing the clothing. So if I say a costume, give me an example. Like what's a costume to you?
I'm thinking like maybe a onesie or a dress up Halloween costume with a pumpkin head. Exactly. That's just what comes to mind.
Yeah. Something that you wear once a year and it's not who you are. And that's the problem, is a lot of these guys are wearing costumes. This is clothing that they're not comfortable wearing. They're not used to wearing. They haven't practiced wearing. They don't wear very often. They're wearing improperly. And in a sense, like it is a costume. It doesn't look like it even fits them well. Now, what's amazing is sometimes you see those costumes on Halloween, which we recognize are not it's like, wow, that person really looks the part. Like, it's like, that looks like, a real pirate, or that person really got into it. And that's, I think, ideally what I want to see people get into when it comes to style, is to find a style that suits you, that you want to be wearing, that enhances your natural traits, makes you, if you want to look stronger, it makes you look stronger. If you want to come off as more competent, it makes you look more competent. And for them to be able to find that image or style, a lot of people think that throwing a suit and tie on with nice shoes is all they need to look good. That's not true, because you could be very uncomfortable. It cannot fit you. In a sense, you're wearing a costume. But when you find that, hey, I'm more of a well-fitted button-down shirt with vest and cowboy boots and jeans kind of guy, yeah, I think there's a great brand out of Australia called RM Williams. I believe. Yeah. And some people, that's going to be, just a great brand. And I really I love their slip-on boots. They're kind of a Chelsea design that actually are a lot more rugged. I also kind of I know that some of the most dangerous and deadly animals in the world all seem to live in Australia. So I like to think that, hey, if I'm going to be going out for a walk or in and around nature, I want to be covered a bit more so that, if I brush up against, an insect that, I'm not going to worry about getting stung or something. I just get that feeling from RM Williams and what they put together, and that brand suits me. And I'd like to think that, whatever it be, streetwear, suits, retro style, steampunk, whatever it is that you find works for you. I want to see guys dive into it and then be able to own that look.
Okay, yeah, sure thing. So I'm curious, Antonio, picture this. So we've got a 23-year-old man. He's listening into this podcast right now. He's realized the importance of dressing after what you've said, but he finds that, holy crap, I've got no great looking, good fitting clothes in my wardrobe. And, he's come out of university and he's into entrepreneurship and ready to pursue his path. And he wants to give a great impression to people, whether that's, through sales, and maybe at this time he's looking for a lady as well. So I'm wondering, if he has $1,000 to drop on clothes, how should he go about spending that wisely?
Well, he doesn't need $1,000 to dress well. He can probably do it for free. And this is how he would do it. He would simply, reach out to his family, and he would first off have the mindset that he's going to change. This is important. And then, like anything, like if I told you don't have any money for the next week, you would still find a way to eat. And the way is you would ask, you would engage with others. You'd say, hey man, talk to friends, maybe family in the area, go eat at your mom's house for a week. So many guys, they've got uncles, they've got brothers, they've got family who have a lot of great clothing that they just need someone to come through. Hey, I'll come clean out your closet. And do you mind, if you've got some old clothing that, some old dress shirts, some old ties that you never wear anymore that I have? So many people would be open to that. But most people, honestly, it's not a big priority. They don't care. They think that money is going to solve the problem. And money is great. Money will solve the problem faster. You could hire a clothier, or you could hire someone to come in and they could, take care of it quicker. If you had 10,000, you could go into a box store and you could go buy clothing. But I think that, the better thing is for you to have that mindset that I just simply want to dress better, because I could tell you that, yeah, you could use some of that money to take your existing clothing and take it to a tailor and get it adjusted to fit you. That right there is a huge step up for most men. Or you could buy a sewing machine or borrow a sewing machine and do it yourself. This isn't, we put a man on the moon. We launch things into space. We have people swim across the ocean. You're not doing any of those. You're simply having to watch a YouTube video and learn how to dart your own shirts, how to be able to bring in a pair of trousers. And, or you could go to a thrift store, for $50. You could probably buy, get 3 shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, a tie, maybe find a pair of Allen Edmonds shoes, they're selling for $5 or $15, and get those recrafted for $100 because they're usually $500 shoes. So there's all these different routes you could go. I would say money is the biggest excuse I hear from people. And it's not, it's something that is like in people's mindset. It's more of the will to actually take action and find a way is really where it's at. And if you can get that, then, it doesn't matter if you got $100 or $1,000.
Wow. Fantastic answer. I totally wasn't expecting that. I was just expecting you to go, all right, buy A, buy B, and buy C. So this was really interesting. Thanks for that, Antonio. Now, next question is, which item of clothing or aspect of your personal appearance do you most commonly get complimented for?
Me personally, I'm a pretty casual dresser around. I mean, people love my jackets on Real Men Real Style. I'd say if they watch my videos, it's going to be my jackets. People love my jackets. I get them from a variety of companies, from having some custom made to going over to Suit Supply. But the colors, I try to bring in unique fabrics. In my normal day-to-day life, maybe just simply, probably the best compliment I receive is that, you always look good. I don't know why it is, but everything you wear seems to be of higher quality. It fits you well. I don't want to be that person that is memorable for a particular piece of clothing. I would rather just be remembered as that guy that always dresses well and just simply is nice to, he's fun to be around, but they get past the clothing very quickly. And that's what I push. I don't care about clothing actually on my website. Clothing is just a vehicle. It's an end. It's a means to the end, and the end is I want to help men get what they want out of life. And the clothing, like, you can find signature pieces. It may be shirts for you. It may be ties. For some guys, it may be an accessory like watches, sunglasses, or a hat. But always remember, it's just a means to the end. To be able to meet her and have the confidence to talk to her, for her to remember you, or for you to walk into that interview and get that job. And I think if that's, if you can take that, then you're ahead of most.
Sure thing. Some really great mindset stuff going on there. That's for sure. I can tell you're highly evolved in that realm. Now, another question here is, do you think there is any benefit to wearing $100 underwear compared to $5 underwear?
Well, if that $5 underwear is crushing, if somebody was coming up to you and basically grabbed your balls and squeezed, I don't think you'd performed very well today, Brandon. I wouldn't either. And it really comes down to comfort. If you can find a $5 pair of underwear that are just awesome, amazing, they work for you, that's all you need. $100 underwear, it is great. There's $1,000 underwear out there.
Wow.
I was actually, there's actually a bra for your balls if you're interested. There are all these things out there, but I'm just saying, depending on what, how you want to feel, what you're into and what is important, that's where you can spend the money. There are some great companies. I've worked with one of them, actually. I love it. Sheath. They don't sell $100 underwear, but he made a pouch for your package in his underwear. And I love it because, I don't really have an issue with chafing and my testicle. Well, I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but let's just say I don't have an issue with hanging really, really low. There are some men though, that they hang, and it's an issue because they rub up against you, especially as you get older as a man. You're only 22, but when you get into your 70s, we've probably heard the horror stories, but I'm getting a little bit too graphic here. But the point is that this solves the problem and makes those men feel better. It literally makes them feel better. And also they feel more confident. They feel better. So in that case, I would say that maybe you would want to spend more for your underwear there. And there's, it's like justifying $1,000 shoes. How do you do that in a world where a couple dollars could feed, a starving kid somewhere? Well, I look at it as that those $1,000 shoes are the representation of oftentimes a bespoke artist building a pair of very unique shoes. And you could say, they shouldn't even exist and no one should buy. But the reality is that people freely choose to spend their money there because they enjoy it. It brings them pleasure. And that's, I think in a sense, there's always going to be those higher end products. And I don't think that they need to be justified. The justification is a human being making a conscious decision to purchase them freely with his own money.
Sure thing. Thank you very much for that, Antonio. My next question here is, why do you think Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs can get away with wearing the same old thing every single day?
Well, because they think about it and that's what they planned. Mark could have a stylist come in and he could have all of his clothing custom made. And, Steve could have done that as well at certain points. But they're on, I think, down on record. Even Mark, he posted over on his Facebook page, his closet, and it's all the same thing. And part of it's that idea. I've heard that they actually don't want to think about that. Who was it? There was a Wall Street businessman. Oh, gosh, I forgot who this guy was, but he talked about how he wore the same suit and the same white shirt and the same tie every day. Now, it's just simply, he wanted to send the message. He didn't want to think about outfits. He just simply wanted to control the message. So I have no problem with somebody wearing casual clothing, but they control their message. And that's the key, is that, those shoes we can talk about, what did Steve Jobs wear? Do you remember, Brandon?
Jeans and a gray t-shirt. I could be wrong though. A black t-shirt.
Yep, the turtleneck.
Yeah, that's the one.
And what did he wear? Did he wear military boots?
I tell you what, until I came across your channel, I never paid attention to footwear, so I've got no idea.
He wore running shoes, New Balance. And so it was always funny, but why, wouldn't that stuff wear out? Why did he keep wearing the same thing again and again? I mean, I don't know about you, but go try to find a well-fitted try to find a black turtleneck. They're not so easy to find anymore. So he actually had to go, where was he getting these things? And the thing is, he just crafted an image that he liked that served a wide range of, simply, he was able to do that because they also were in the position of power. And that's what another thing I like about, you can buck the trend of what everyone else is wearing when you're in a position of power. And it just goes to amplify your own, in a sense of power. Now, if they had a dress code at their company and they were violating their own dress code and doing it in front of their employees, I think it could have been an issue. But these companies also didn't have dress codes, or they had very casual dress codes that they fit within. So these guys, it's a very much a thought out and crafted message and presentation.
Yeah, okay, sure thing. And another question I want to ask before we hop into some fun questions. Not to say these ones aren't fun, but there's a next section. I don't know if you listened to the Tim Ferriss podcast, but he typically asks these really interesting questions that we'll get into. But there's one that comes to mind, still on this clothing thing, and that is, what is your response to the entrepreneurs out there that say, dressing doesn't matter, and if you just dress up in a suit, that doesn't mean anything. It's all about the hustle, and what you dress in, it doesn't mean shit. So just to be quite frank, what is your response to those guys?
Do any of them tell you this while they're naked? I mean, because if it doesn't matter, why are they wearing anything? I mean, Carly would be more comfortable just to not wear anything. Most of the people saying that are saying it out of, it's oftentimes taken out of context. So they understand that some clothing does matter. And it's just simply controlling the image. If I am going to a circus, if I'm going to perform in the circus, image and clothing is very important. Because if I'm a clown, if I'm an animal trainer, if I am the ringmaster, there's an image and an idea. If I'm going to be meeting with the prime minister, it's not that, and maybe I'm a swimmer. My natural uniform is a swimsuit, but I'm not going to wear a swimsuit to meet the prime minister, because the natural uniform at the area where I am going to meet him on his terms is a suit. Now, you don't have to go to that level, and you can always, but oftentimes I think it's a sign of respect. It's a simply breaking down of barriers, making it so that, it's very easy to communicate with people going back and forth. If you travel to a country and you don't, it's always amazing. I only speak one language. My wife speaks 3 and my kids speak 3. And I'm always very kind of jealous in the sense of whenever we go to Ukraine, they can speak the language and they're able to engage. I'm at the mercy of all these people who, they don't speak my language, and I shouldn't have to expect them to. I'm in their country. And I think if you look at clothing as a language, you just realize it's not being who you aren't. It's just being respectful. I think Tom Ford said this, dressing well is just a sign of good manners.
Sure thing. Thank you very much for that. So moving on to the Tim Ferriss questions, Antonio. The first one here is, what is something you believe that other people think is insane?
And that's a great one. I don't think Tim Ferriss came with that. I think wasn't it Elon Musk or somebody that came up with that question?
It could have been, because I think Tim Ferriss takes questions from others. I'm not so sure though.
Yeah. And that is a hard one, because to answer it very well, you can't take like a normal stance, but I would say that for me, it's not conservation, and it's going to be entrepreneurs and innovators that save this world, not people that conserve and watch, and basically the environmentalists. If I don't know if that came out right, but the point is I look at like issues with, let's say, not enough fresh water. They say in 50 years, we're going to have huge issues on this planet with that. I agree, but I don't think it's going to be us conserving fresh water when you've got China, you've got India that are emerging, and those people over there, they want the same living standards that they see in the United States, or they see over in Australia, they see over in England. And I think it's going to be leaps in innovation and technology, which ensure that we've got a planet that's livable. We're going to figure out ways to put something in the ocean, like little micro, machines that are going to clean the ocean. It's not going to be us changing our bad human habits of wasting and destroying. It's going to be actually, I think, those innovators that are going to come in and fix this. I'm not saying that, that other stuff isn't important, but I guess, that would be one thing that I believe that maybe not everyone believes. It's not going to be us conserving resources. It's going to be us refiguring out how to reconfigure them.
Sure thing. Next question. What is the book you've given most as a gift? And if you don't gift books, then what is your number one book recommendation?
I think there's a book that was brought up with Aaron's, maybe it was Scaling Up. I gave it to him as a gift, but he didn't read it.
Yeah, we found out he wasn't much of a reader on my podcast.
Yeah, but he has. I don't really give too many books, but I do try to lead people, and I recommend things. Essentialism is probably one that I like to recommend to people, just because I think Greg McGowan did a great job with that. I've also given away the book Deep Work by,
Cal Newport.
Drawing. Yeah, because part of it, I actually was blown away because I'm in the book. And I thought that was really cool that Cal found some of my work and liked what we were doing. But the other thing is, it's funny. I talked before I even had the book, before it came out, I read his essays, and I was a big fan of just the idea of pulling yourself out of the busy work and having like sabbaticals in which you just sit down and do really, really profound work that matters.
Sure, it's still a book on my to-read list, so I'll certainly keep that in mind. Next question here is, what purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months?
Purchase of $100 or less. We've made quite a few of those. I'm trying. Usually it's with my kids, and maybe, or it could be something with, I just say I like to randomly give flowers to my wife. I look at it as something that flowers, a lot of guys underestimate the power of flowers, especially when there's no reason or no occasion. I look at it like a get out of jail free card, because I will screw up and I'll do something, but all the good women I find, at least the women in my life, have great memories. So even though I screw things up, like today, I got in a little bit of an argument with my wife about, nothing is super important, but I know that it's like, okay, like I've created enough good chits that this will get passed over, but I still got to make it up. Like, I'm like, what else can I do? So giving flowers to my wife for no reason multiple times. I got a specific one. I sent flowers to my accountant on April 10th it was like April 8th. And I did that because I knew that everyone was going to be, it was like a week before tax day here in the US. And I figured everyone else is going to be sending her like all their problems. So I'll send her flowers, and she loved it. It's just, and that's, yeah. So flowers, very powerful.
Wow. Fantastic. So what are your morning rituals, Antonio?
Well, usually at 2 o'clock in the morning, I've got to wake up and put my 5-year-old on the potty. Otherwise she'll pee the bed. So if that doesn't happen, then I will be first thing in the morning going over to her bed and pulling off the sheets and then cleaning up. I'll go down, have coffee with my wife. That's something we like to do. We use one of those little steam, French presses. She doesn't like sugar in her coffee. I like to have 1 spoon of sugar. I make my own cream. Really try to keep it simple. Usually then my other daughter, Katya, she's 2, will wake up and she loves just run. You're just an amazing person that you're there in the morning, and she runs and gives us hugs. And, I've lately started my mornings off very slow, and I kind of enjoy that. I used to wake up at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning when I was in the Marine Corps. We'd get more done before 8 o'clock than it seems like most people would do all day. But I don't really have anything I need to prove to anyone now. So I just now try to spend that quality time with my wife. It's great if I can get in a run. Doesn't happen all the time, but I am oftentimes watching my girls as my wife. Sometimes she'll take the time to go to the gym. She's doing CrossFit now. So those are our mornings.
Okay, sure. And so now I'm just thinking in terms of your typical day and the way you choose to execute on high leverage tasks. Given you've got a family and wife to take care of, I'm curious about how you go about managing your time and selecting those critical tasks to get done for your business.
Well, I say no to most things. I mean, I think it took us a while to set this up, and it's on a Thursday because I only talk with people on Thursdays. It was funny. I got someone that sent me a message yesterday saying that, hey, I'm here for our meeting. I'm like, that's impossible because I never have meetings on Wednesdays or Tuesdays or Mondays. Everything is on Thursdays for me, and preferably Thursday afternoons. This was a little bit outside of my window, but not too much. So that's why I didn't mind having this meeting a little bit later. But I tried to say no and to set up systems that just keep me focused in. So I've got certain days that are video days. I have a studio. As soon as I got back, I pulled out of my home studio as fast as I could because I know that my family will interrupt me. And it's something that I just value them over my business. But to have a place where I can go that's quiet, where my studio is set up and I can film and have set times to film, that works well. I also have it set up with my team so that I have to get the certain things delivered to them at certain times. And if I don't, there are consequences. In a sense, they get paid for doing nothing. As a business owner that likes to maximize his return on investment, I don't like paying people for doing nothing. So that encourages me to get certain things done by certain deadlines.
I see. And when did I'm wondering, at what stage in your journey did you realize that delegating work to other people could really help you scale up your business and free up a bit of your time? And how did that come about?
The first person I hired was my tech manager. I had known Yuri for quite a while, and I paid him $200 a month. It was literally just for a few hours a week, and he was going in and basically resetting up my websites. I knew I did not like the tech aspect. And I was doing this. We've grown, now he works for me full time, and that has grown to quite a bit more that I pay him to keep him there. But that was the first time I realized, I can hand off something like this. And I loved how it freed up my time. And then after that, we started looking for very particular instances. I like when something's compartmentalized and then somebody can do something better than me and run with it. So when it comes to video editing, that was something we packaged up and I handed off to, a guy that I hired specifically to do that. Now I have a social media manager and, she's got that specific role. I have the job now as the CEO. I'm still the janitor. I'm still the talent behind the video, but I think I'm very clear of all I'm doing. And I break out those positions and I recognize that I'm doing this role and the consequences that come with it. So I mentioned the janitor. Like right now I'm looking at my office. It is a mess. I've got shirts that need to be ironed. I have things like I'm just still moving into this new office. And so I put up an ad because I need a personal assistant, because I honestly don't want to spend a weekend organizing and cleaning my office. It's worth it to me to pay somebody to come in and do this, and someone that would gratefully do this and love to do it and can stay up on, all those things that I know a personal assistant can do. So, but first, focus in. If you're getting to this point, you got to be making money with your business. So, and that was another thing that we eventually found a salesperson to come in. And that is one of the easiest hires to make, because a salesperson, brings you a 5 times return on what you're paying them, or should be.
Yeah, sure thing. And do you have any concerns of removing yourself from the picture in the YouTube videos if for some reason you wanted to fully automate the business? Do you ever envision having someone take your place on video teaching style to men, or are you satisfied with what you do now on camera?
Yeah. I mean, I want to eventually phase myself out. So, I mean, it's called Real Men, Real Style, not Antonio Centeno.
Yeah.
And I think that the mission of helping men build wardrobes that complements their individual style is bigger than me. And I get personality, and I like it. I think that for some brands that works out well, but there's always an exit. There's always going to be a time. I mean, we all have death coming for us. And so you're going to exit at some point. And are you going to exit on your own terms, or are you just going to work to a point where you can't do anything more and you're having to be carried out, or, you start losing your influence and stuff. And some people want that. They want to be the entertainer. That is cool. That's just not me. I see myself. I want to bring in, I want to bring in a variety. I've got men who they ask me questions. Hey, I'm African and I've got dark skin, dark hair. Can you create more content for me? It's like, well, it's hard, because I don't really know that complexion. But what if I bring in somebody? What if a lot of people want to hear a woman's perspective? Well, I can bring a woman into my channel. So that's where I get excited, is that I can actually make my channel better by making it less about me.
Yeah, sure thing. Great answer. Now, we've got a few more questions here, Antonio. And I'm curious, on your entrepreneurial journey, have there been any significant aha moments? And after you came to that aha moment, what happened for your business, and how did you come to that aha moment?
Sure. One that just popped in my mind was a consultant that I hired, and I was paying her $5,000 a month. And I remember at the time it was a lot of money. And in that month, she did nothing of value for my business, from my perspective. I fired her after that. I probably should have fired her after the first week, but I realized that I was paying her more than I was paying myself, and that I got absolutely almost no value from her. And that I really had to be careful with bringing on people like that. There was different perceptions, but it was when I realized I paid her more than I paid myself. But I was still able I was able to do it. And I was like, well, why don't I start paying myself a salary? And I think a lot of business owners don't ever think to do this when they're first starting off, but it's huge, because what it does is it starts to allow you to separate your business from your personal life. And you realize that if you really are running a business, not a hobby, it's got to be able to pay you. You're not in this just to work like a slave for absolutely nothing. And money isn't that important, but it does buy milk. It does buy bread. It does create security for your family. It does allow you to pay for your kids to go to college. And so I started paying myself, and I was able to, and then I realized that, oh, wow, I can actually set up the business that I can set something. And I think that was, for me, the business became very legitimate whenever I started being able to pay myself well. And my wife was able to just do I don't feel guilty. My wife, she mentioned at one point before I did this, I'd been talking about allowing her to buy curtains for the house. We had no curtains in our house for 3 years. And it was just simply, I felt guilty taking that money, spending it on curtains, which to me had no value. And I'd wanted to just spend it on my company, but they were valuable to my wife, because this is our home. And I realized that this was something she was just kind of biting her lip on. And all of a sudden when I started paying myself, it's like, well, yeah, use it however you want. Like my relationship improved quite a bit.
Mm. Okay, sure thing. Thanks for that. Now, what have we got here? What would you say, Antonio, is the best or most worthwhile investment you've made? Now, that could be an investment of money, time, energy, or any other resource.
The best investment, I don't, can you be more specific?
Yeah, it is a bit of a vague question. My other podcast guest had trouble with this one, but ultimately what I'm looking for is the biggest return on investment in terms of value added to your life. And so whether you've spent money on it or whether you've spent time or whether you've spent energy towards it, what's like the number one thing that has impacted you the most?
I would say spending the money to go see people and to build relationships, whether it be conferences, whether it be, I mean, we took this 6-month trip, and a big part of it was me spending time and going and meeting up with people, from people that follow my channel to friends that I hadn't seen for years. We stopped in Park City, Utah, and I saw a guy I hadn't seen for about 3 years, but we both run businesses, and we just got to spend time talking and engaging and hanging out with each other. I would always try. I did that in Colorado with business friends. If I get the chance, and I know I can, anytime I can spend time and money and trade that, and I'm not taking away from my family, and I can go see someone that I respect, someone that I care for, I try to do that. I've jumped it. I remember there's a guy named Andrew Warner who runs Mixergy.com. He was doing a live event down in Austin, Texas. And I'm thinking like the only thing between me and him is about a 24-hour drive. So I just went and rented a car and drove right down there, attended his event for like a couple hours, and then slept in my car and drove back. But that event like opened a lot of opportunity for me. I was around like-minded individuals, and I just think that not enough people, like they're like an hour from each other and they won't make the effort, or, they won't. I think making the effort, spending the money, spending the time to let people know that they're important.
Yeah, sure thing. And for the aspiring entrepreneurs listening in to this podcast, Antonio, do you have any words of wisdom to those who perhaps they've just come out of college, or perhaps they're right on ready to hop into this entrepreneurial route, and maybe they've dabbled with it for a year, but they want to do big things, and you're a great example of someone who's done big things. So I'm curious, what are your words of wisdom for these people?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of work, and you can't aspire. Aspiring isn't doing. Dabbing isn't doing. You got to put in the work, and you got to put in the effort. And you've really, there's a work ethic issue. And I'm not saying that, talk about generational or anything, but if you grow up on a farm, you realize that the animals have to be fed every day. Doesn't matter if it's cold. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas. Like, you got to get out there and you got to feed the animals. You got to do the work. And I really love the farmer work ethic. I'm surrounded by farmers here in Wisconsin, and these guys on dairy farms, like, it can be 30 below zero, and they're not staying in their houses warm, complaining on Facebook about the weather. They're out making sure their cows are alive, and they're bundling up because they got to make it happen. You're the only person that can make your life happen, and happen in a way that you want to see it unfold. So go do it.
Yeah, sure thing. My uncle's was a dairy farmer for years, and that's right. He had to get up at 5:30 a.m. every single morning, no matter what, and it's something you got to take constant care of. So I can certainly relate there. Now, do you have a quote you live your life by, Antonio, or one that you think of often?
I wouldn't say I live my life by it, but there's one my mom used to always say, and it was a Persian saying, I cried because I had no shoes till I met a man who had no feet. And it always like puts things in perspective that I've got it made. I'm 40 years old, 41 actually now. I've got 4 healthy kids, a beautiful wife, And I mean, I have food on my table, a full fridge, and I don't live in a time of war. Everything else is friggin' gravy. And it's really easy to get discouraged. Like I got now almost 1.4 million subscribers, which sometimes I look at it's nothing compared to someone like Logan Paul, who blew past me and was able to get this audience. And I could let that get to me. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I am having great success for me. I'm standing by my principles. I'm building something of value. And I think we live in a time that people get on Instagram and they compare themselves. And it really, like, it's like you see these beautiful people, these, this stuff. A lot of people on my YouTube channel, not a lot of people, but I get those hate comments and they're like, you've got ugly teeth, or you are not like a model. Like, how can you're not even a very stylish person. I'm like, I actually look at that as a compliment. I'm like, exactly right. I am not a GQ model. I am not that kind of guy. I am someone that took what he had and did the best with it. And I get excited because I think there are many people that have a lot more natural assets and ability than me. And if they just simply use my information and advice, they're going to go a lot farther than me. And it's not about how far you go as a teacher. It's about how far your students and their students are able to go.
Yeah, fantastic words, Antonio. So to the listeners listening in, I just want to ask you, Antonio, before you head off, where can we find you and your stuff on social media?
Sure. Just type in Real Men, Real Style, and we'll pop up. Whether you're on Facebook, whether you are over on YouTube, whether you're just checking out on Google, you'll find us.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Antonio, for your time today. It's something I really appreciate. It's one of your most valuable assets. So I just want to say thanks again for sharing your time with us.
You're welcome, Brandon.
Head to brandonnankivell.com/subscribe. This is also the best way to interact with me and keep up with what I'm doing. Again, head to brandonnankivell.com/subscribe. As usual, thank you for listening, my friends. I release new episodes every week. Make sure you don't miss one by subscribing. It's super easy and means a lot to me. Go to iTunes, search for The 1% Show, and click subscribe. Once again, I'm your host, Brandon Nankivell, and I'll see you in the next episode.